Hip flexion end range liftoffs are a great way to build your hip flexor strength in the end range hip flexion position, which is really going to translate over into things like a deep squat. So for this exercise, you're going to want a box or some sort of bench. The higher it is, the more difficult. The height needs to match your ability level. So it should be high enough that it is a challenge, but not so high that you compensate to move your leg. You're gonna need or want to use 2 PVC pipes or something along the lines of these broomsticks or something that you can hold on to for balance. We're gonna put ourselves into our end range hip flexion. Now, something I want you to pay attention to as you're here is number 1, we don't have any groin or front of the hip sensations, nothing pinching. If you do, this is not a good exercise for you. Your hip is probably not ready for this. Don't push into that. Number 2 is we want to make sure that we are not jutted away from our hips. So if we're really out here, this might be too high. We might not have great control of our pelvis, but we want our pelvis in a relatively even position so we can really work on hip flexion and we are not compensating through our spines. The last thing is I want you to keep your knee locked and keep your belt buckle tucked slightly. We do not want to come into this position because you're more likely to feel some pinching here, and we want to stay in a relatively neutral position because, again, we don't want to start incorporating some of the spine. We also don't want to start incorporating our other leg. So stay locked and long on the stance leg. From here, you are going to assume position. You're going to drive those sticks into the ground. You're going to find your hip flexors, which are going to be the front of your leg. You're going to contract them. You're going to slowly ramp them up, float the leg off the ground, hold for the prescribed amount of time, 3 to 5 seconds, parachute back down. Now, 2 things we want to pay attention to. 1, we are not using momentum. That would be too hard if we were doing that. 2, we are not leaning or bending that opposite leg. Again, that means it's too hard. Meet your body where it is. We want to make sure that we are also, a third thing, not straightening our knee or moving our ankle around just to get it off. Again, that means it's too difficult. Please meet your body where it is. Make sure that we feel all of the front of the hip working and you're able to hold it for the prescribed amount of time and reps, and you're parachuting it back down and controlling, and that is going to be your end range hip flexion liftoff. You should be able to progress in higher positions, longer hold, or more reps as you do this on a regular basis.